The story we are about to tell begins in 1945, in the territory of New Mexico, USA, precisely in the desert, in an area called Jornada del Muerto, also nicknamed the Journey of Death, because if you ran out of water in this place, you would not survive. While in Europe and other parts of the world people lived through the atrocities of World War II and the Nazism with Hitler in command, many physical and chemical scientists and many military men fled from Germany to the USA, bringing their knowledge on nuclear fission. America began to fear that, if Hitler had gathered all this knowledge, he would have developed the first atomic bomb and winning the war. So, in those months began a secret American project called the Manhattan Project, whose goal was precisely to build the atomic bomb. On July 16, 1945, at 5:29 a.m. the first nuclear device in history was detonated.
In the dead silence of the morning, at 5:29:45 Mountain War time, the Jornada del Muerto was bathed in an intense flash of a light that man had only seen from the stars.
During the tests for the creation of the atomic bomb, then from 1939, of its use in 1945 with the Hiroshima episode, and in the following years, UFO sightings, at the time also called flying saucers, flying dishes, flying sausages, flying cups and spaceships, intensified a lot all over the world, as if to testify the correlation between this nuclear device and the presence of these visitors. The most shocking incident occurred on July 2, 1947, in Roswell, New Mexico, when a UFO crashed to the ground in Chavez County. The story soon became famous, as the first news disclosed by the newspapers hypothesized that the crash of one or more UFOs had occurred, which, according to some theories, would be followed by the alleged recovery of the corpses of extraterrestrials by the American military. After the first official denial by the Air Force, the case was essentially forgotten. And this is where the recovery phase of the RAAF, the Roswell Air Base, begins. A military flight nurse, Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, was assigned to travel to the site with a military intelligence officer. As they approached the crash, military personnel realized that all but one of the aliens aboard were dead. The alien was similar in appearance, but not the same as the other extraterrestrials inside the ship. While trying to give the alien the first attention, Matilda says,
"I immediately understood that she was trying to communicate with me, with mental images or telepathic thoughts that he projected directly into my mind. Since no one but me could perceive these messages, I was ordered to accompany the surviving alien to the base."
Being the only woman, nurse and unarmed on base, Matilda was assigned as the official communicator and escort of the alien. The girl's task was to communicate, interview him and ask him some questions provided by the military, to find out as much information as possible, and then report to the superiors. Everything happened between July and August 1947. Matilda hid from the military one of the copies of the transcripts of the various interviews and talks that she held with the alien, and after her service, she managed to take away the copies, so when she became very old, she revealed them to the world, thanks to the help of a writer-journalist. Matilda described the alien being of short stature, about 1.20 meters, slender constitution, disproportionate head respect to the body, 3 fingers on each limb, reduced and non-functioning nose, mouth and ears. Very large eyes with dark lenses, smooth gray skin, assessed, but Matilda perceived a feminine presence. He announced that he has a name, Errol. During the interviews, Matilda was never alone with the alien, there was always military personnel on guard to attend. To better understand what are the topics of the interview that Matilda has faced with the alien, we report below a series of questions and answers.
Why did your spaceship crash?
She was hit by an atmospheric electrical discharge that caused it to lose control.
Why was the spacecraft in this sector?
For the study of radioactive explosions.
Which planet are you from?
The house, birthplace, world of dominion.
What are your intentions on Earth?
Preserve, protect the domain property.
What have you learned about the governments and military installations of the Earth?
Poor, little ones, you destroy the planet.
Why don't your people manifest their existence to the inhabitants of the Earth?
To watch. To observe. No contact.
How is the state of development of your civilization?
Billions of years.
Do you believe in God?
We believe it is a question of always continuing.
Can you read or write any language on Earth?
No.
Do you understand numbers and math?
Yes, I am an officer, pilot and engineer.
How do they understand that we have no intention of harming you?
The intentions are clear. We see images and feelings in your mind.
To improve the conversation with the woman, the alien was asked to study books in English. The alien learned the language in a few days, and communications with Matilda were clearer and longer. From that moment on, everything changed in the dynamics of conversation between Matilda and the alien. In fact, on the 15th day of Erede's rescue, Matilda was able to communicate effortlessly and fluidly with the extraterrestrial being in English. And here begins the most fascinating part of the story. Erede begins to explain to Matilda the origins of humans and a lot of information about the galaxy and past alien interference. Erede declares that all sentient beings are immortal spirit beings. The ship is piloted by ISBES who use doll bodies, in the same way an actor wears a mask or costume. It is a mechanical tool with which to operate in the physical world. She as all other ISBES in his class, including superiors, inhabit these doll-like organisms when they are in service in space. When not on duty, they leave the body and operate, think, communicate, they travel and exist without the use of a body. Organisms are built of synthetic materials, including a very sensitive electrical nervous system, that each ISB adjusts or refines according to a uniquely compensated electronic wavelength, with the wavelength or frequency emitted by each ISB. Each ISB is capable of creating a unique wave frequency that identifies it, such as a radio frequency signal. This serves, in part, as a fingerprint. The doll's body acts as a radio receiver. Erede claims to be an exploration force officer, pilot and engineer who is part of an operating civilization in space and which defines itself as the domain. This civilization controls a vast number of galaxies, stars, planets, satellites and asteroids in an area that is about a quarter of the entire physical universe. The organization continues its mission of security, control, resources and expansion of the territory of the Dominion. Erede explained that ISBES have been around since before the universe began, defined as immortal, because a spirit is not born, and therefore cannot die, but exists in a perception personally postulated of is, will be. She accurately explained that spirits are not equal to each other. Each of them has a unique, powerful, aware and capable identity. She says that the collection of suns existing in these immediate vicinity of the universe were born in the last one's 200 trillion years. The age of the physical universe is infinitely old, probably its beginning is around 4 quadrillion years. The Domain Exploration Force entered the Milky Way very recently, only about 10,000 years ago. Their first action was to occupy the inner planets of the Old Empire, settling the central government for this galaxy and other adjacent regions. These planets are found in the systems of stars of the Ursa Major constellation. For the next 1,500 years, the Dominion set up bases for its forces along the invasion route leads to the center of this galaxy and beyond. Shortly after the extinction of Homo sapiens, the base was attacked by a remnant of the military forces of Old Empire which, unbeknownst to the Dominion, had a very old underground base, hidden above Mars. The Dominion base was wiped out by a military attack from the Mars base and ISBES from Domain Scout Force captured. After a very extensive and persistent investigation into the loss of its crews, the Dominion found that the Old Empire has operated for millions of years, in this part of the galaxy, on a very broad basis and carefully hidden. Eventually, the ships and forces of the Old Empire and the Dominion faced off openly in the space of the solar system. This battle between the forces of the Old Empire and the Dominion lasted until about AD 1235, when the Dominio destroyed the last ship of the Old Empire in this sector. The Dominion also suffered many losses. The Dominion discovered that a large area of space was controlled by an electronic force field, which controlled all ISBES in this part of the galaxy, including Earth. The electronic screen, still active, it is designed to monitor ISBES and prevent them from leaving the area. If any ISB attempted to penetrate this screen of forces, they would be caught in some sort of electronic network. The captured ISB is undergoing a very severe brainwashing. Treatment erases its original memory. Massive electric shocks are used in this process, just like psychiatrists do on Earth with electroshock therapy to erase memory and personality of the patient, and make him more cooperative. On Earth, only a few hundred volts of electricity are used for this therapy. While the electrical voltage used in the Old Empire's operation against ISBES is on the order of millions of volts. This massive trauma erases all ISB's memory. Erasing memory isn't just for a one-body life. All accumulated experiences of an almost infinite past disappear, as well as the identity of the ISB. The shock makes it impossible for the ISB to remember who he is, where he comes from, his knowledge or skills, his memory of the past and the ability to function as a spiritual entity. They are forgotten, becoming a blind and robotic no-entity. After the shock, a series of hypnotic suggestions are used to install false memories and a false time orientation in each ISB post. This includes a post-hypnotic command to return to base when the body dies, so that the same kind of shock and hypnosis can be done again and again, forever. The hypnotic command forces the patient to forget to remember. When the body dies, the ISB leaves it and is held back by the fencing of forces. It is captured and ordered to return to the light. The idea of heaven and life after death are part of the hypnotic imposition, a part of the treatment that makes the whole mechanism work. After the ISB has been shocked and hypnotized to erase the memory of lived lives, he immediately receives the hypnotic command to return to incarnate on Earth, as if he were on a secret mission, and inhabits a new organism. Each ISB is said to have a special purpose on Earth. Of course, it has no purpose to be in a prison, at least for the prisoner. All ISBs declared undesirable are condemned to remain on Earth and classified as untouchable by the old empire. The prison's main operations center for mind control was never discovered. Thus the influences of this base, or bases, are still effective. As the space forces of the old empire have been destroyed, the Dominion thinks that it cannot be prevented that other planetary systems in the galaxy, and other neighbors, can bring their untouchables ISBs to Earth. Thus, the Earth has become a universal landfill for all regions of space. This, in part, explains the strange mixture of races, cultures, languages, moral, religious and political codes, probably influenced by ISBs, of various origins, who populate the Earth. No operation has yet been undertaken to seek, discover and destroy this vast and ancient network of electronic machines that create the screen of anti-ISB forces in this remote corner of the galaxy. Until this is done, we are unable to prevent or interrupt the operation of electric shocks, hypnosis and remote thought control in the prison planet. Of course, all members of the Dominion Exploration Force crew are alerted that this phenomenon can hit them at any moment while they are operating in this space of the solar system, and the trap can snap to catch them. Nobody knows what an Earth ISB does. At this time we are not programmed to invest the resources of the Dominion to take total control of this area of space. This will occur in the not-too-distant future, about 5,000 Earth years, according to time planning. At this time, no transports from other planetary systems or galaxies are planned to fall into the continuum of the area's active amnesic screen. Hopefully something could change. Earth is a long way from the center of the galaxy and any other significant galactic civilizations. This isolation makes it unsuitable for use, save as a pit stop on the road between galaxies. The Moon and asteroids are much better suited for this purpose, because they do not have significant gravity. Earth is a heavily gravity planet with heavy metallic soil and a dense atmosphere. This makes it treacherous for navigation. The fact that I am in this room is the result of an accident, despite the ship's technology and my extensive experience as a pilot. There are about 60 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone, not counting the vast areas that the Dominion will have in the future. It is difficult to use more resources to do more periodic reconnaissance of the Earth. Especially when there are no immediate benefits to investing resources here. In an attempt to permanently and irreversibly free themselves from ISBs, they erase their eternal identity, memory and capacity. This final solution was conceived and implemented by psychopathic criminals controlled by the old empire. The minds of the creative inmates of the Earth are continually tortured by butchers and madmen, controlled by the jailers of the old empire. The so-called civilization of the Earth, from the age of the pyramids to the nuclear age, has made a colossal waste of natural resources, a perverse use of intelligence and an explicit oppression of the spiritual essence of every single ESI on this planet. If the Dominion sent ships to every corner of the universe in search of hell, their search could end on Earth. What greater brutalities can be inflicted besides the cancellation of awareness, spiritual, identity, ability, and memory, which is the essence of oneself? It was impossible for the Dominion to save 3,000 ISBs, who now and for a long time inhabit biological organisms on Earth. Over the past 8,000 years, we have been able to recognize and trace most of them. However, our attempts to communicate with them are generally useless, as they are unable to remember their true identity. As a matter of common logic, and for the official domino policy, it is safer and more reasonable to avoid contact with the ISIs that populate the Earth, until the adequate resources are available to locate and destroy the machines of the old empire, thus restoring the memory of the ESI. The actual history of Earth is very bizarre. It is so nonsensical that it is incredible to anyone on Earth who attempts to investigate it. A myriad of vital information is missing from it. A huge conglomeration of non-sequitur relics and mythology has been arbitrarily introduced into it. The volatile nature of the Earth itself cyclically covers, drowns, mixes and shreds physical evidence. These factors, combined with amnesia and post-hypnotic suggestions, false facades, and covert manipulation make a reconstruction of the factual origins and history of Earth civilizations virtually indecipherable. Any investigator, no matter how brilliant, is doomed to wallow in a quagmire of inconclusive assumptions, unworkable hypotheses, and perpetual mystery. Since the domain does not suffer these afflictions, having the advantage of memory, longevity, and an exterior point of view, I will add some clarification to your fragmentary knowledge of the history of Earth. These are some of the dates and events that are not mentioned in Earth history textbooks. These dates are significant because they provide some information concerning the influences of the Old Empire and of the domain on Earth. 208,000 before Christ. The establishment of the Old Empire, whose headquarters were located near one of the tail stars in the Ursa Major constellation of this galaxy. The Old Empire invasion force conquered the area with nuclear weapons sometime earlier. After the radioactivity subsided and the cleanup and restoration were completed, it received the immigration of beings from another galaxy into this galaxy. Those beings set up a society that kept going until about 10,000 years ago when it was superseded by the domain. Before 75,000 before Christ. The domain records contain very little information about the civilizations on the continental land masses of Atlanta and Lemur, except to note that they did coexist on Earth at more or less the same time. Apparently, both civilizations were founded by remnants of electronic, space opera cultures who fled from their native planetary systems to escape political or religious persecution. The domain knows that a long-standing edict of the Old Empire prohibits unauthorized colonization of planets. Therefore, it is possible that their destruction was caused by police or military forces who pursued the colonists as criminals and destroyed them. Although this seems a likely supposition, no conclusive evidence exists that explains the complete destruction and disappearance of two entire electronic civilizations. Another possibility is that a massive submarine volcanic eruption in the region of Lake Toba, in Sumatra and Mountain Krakatoa in Java caused the destruction of Lemur. The flood waters caused by the eruption overwhelmed all the land masses, including the highest mountains. Survivors of the destruction of the civilization, the Lemurians, are the earliest ancestors of the Chinese. Australia and the ocean areas to the north were the center of the Lemurian civilization and are the source of Oriental races. Both civilizations possessed electronics, flight and similar technologies of space opera cultures. Before 30,000 before Christ. Earth started being used a dumping ground and prison for ISBEs who were judged untouchable. Underground amnesia stations were set up on Mars and on Earth in the Rwenzori Mountains in Africa, in the Pyrenees Mountains of Portugal, and in steppes of Mongolia. These electronic monitoring points create force screens designed to detect and capture ISBEs, when the ISBE departs the body at death. Further population controls are installed through the use of long-range electronic thought control mechanisms. These stations are still in operation and they are extremely difficult to attack or destroy, even for the domain, which will not maintain a significant military force in this area until a later date. The pyramid civilizations were intentionally created as part of the ISBE prison system on Earth. The pyramid is alleged to be the symbol for wisdom. However, the wisdom of the Old Empire on planet Earth is intended to operate as part of the elaborate amnesia trap. These are opposite to the qualities of an immortal spiritual being which have no mass, or meaning. An ISBE is solely because it thinks that it is. The truth is that every single ISBE on Earth came to Earth from some other planetary system. Not one person on Earth is a native inhabitant. Human beings did not evolve on Earth. In the past, Egyptian society was run by the prison administrators or priests, who, in turn, manipulated a pharaoh, controlled the treasury and kept the inmate population enslaved physically and spiritually. In modern times, the priests have changed, but the function is the same. However, now the priests are prisoners too. Mystery reinforces the walls of the prison. The Old Empire feared that the ISBEs on Earth might regain their memory. Therefore, one of the primary functions of the Old Empire priesthood is to prevent ISBEs on Earth from remembering who they really are, how they came to Earth, where they came from. Imagine what might happen if all of the inmates in the prison suddenly remembered that they have the right to be free. What if they suddenly realized that they have been falsely imprisoned and rise up as one against the guards? They are afraid to reveal anything that looks like the civilization of the inmates' home planets. A body, a piece of clothing, a symbol, a spaceship, an advanced electronics device, or any other remnant of civilization from a home planet could remind a being and rekindle his memory. In Egypt, when the body of a person died, they were buried with their earthly possessions, including their former body wrapped in linen, to sustain their soul or ka after death. An ISBE does not have a soul, he is a soul. On the home planet of an ISBE, their material possessions were not lost, stolen or forgotten when the being died or left the body. An ISBE could return and claim the possessions. However, if the ISBE has amnesia, they will not remember that they had any possession. So, governments, insurance companies, bankers, family members and other vultures can pick their possessions clean without fear of retribution from the deceased.
Prison planet, Gnosticism and reincarnation trap ideas are gaining traction. These ideas seem to be growing more and more in popularity. They've been getting more popular since the 90s, and now we even have entire subreddits dedicated to these ideas. What are we to make of this? Are we awakening? Is this another trap set? Do we dare to be optimistic?
Yes, this realm is designed in a way. If you look at this place as an outside observer, you can see how it all connects to one purpose, loosh harvesting or something along those lines. If you look at near-death experience reports, most come off as some person being screwed with by an astral timeshare salesman. Then you have this dark control force that rules over our government, with high taxes, insane laws, and layers upon layers of brainwashing. If you dare question this realm with that mindset, you get this response.
It's all BS cope for people who haven't done a single lifetime focused on spiritual growth in the past 5,000 years to find a new way to be the victim of some higher power. Not surprising that it is popular here on X and on Reddit.
Which is a manipulation tactic to shame and guilt trip you, like the majority of human interactions. But I think there is a bigger picture than loosh harvesting. Because we lack so much information, combined with the flawed structure of the human mind, it's a miracle that this awareness got this far. The reason why I believe it to be true is I have a lot of experiences that would validate such an idea. I have woken up in a simulation tank, attacked by parasites, and got into higher awareness before. I don't know what's going on, but I think this realm might be a trap for many different beings, with different states of consciousness and origins, like they slowly groom you to be here, while the bigger self is distracted until it gets hoodwinked. I don't know if it is truly like this, though a lot of the prison planet type people are so stressed and self-ending that it is hard to organize. I'm like this too. I see some people fight and argue over nothing, which to me is dumb since we all share the same cell. It doesn't help that the New Age movement is full of greasy weasels, but I notice they like to idealize a victimhood complex. I think we can fight them with our imagination. I think imagination might make us rare, and they want this. That brings up many questions. But the Archons seem to need imagination awareness to manifest things. I don't know what is going on, but we need to go about this with clear minds and courage. Fear is what they ride on to screw with us.
I am very curious as to what will happen if these ideas become even more popular, though. Might even be the start of a new spiritual movement. If it does, then believers of this worldview will have their ideas tested as if they are right and all of this stuff does actually exist. Then those entities will have no choice but to reveal themselves if there is a mass movement against them. No. Conspiracies are becoming more and more mainstream. What happens if Gnosticism is mainstream?
Last time it happened, the Cathars were killed off in mass for hundreds of years and their history burned and wiped from public knowledge. I wonder what the simulation is trying to do. Because it has the power to stop this movement, but it lets it continue and foster. Some conspiracy circles are becoming big enough to profit from.
The prison got smarter. It'll just hijack any threatening movement now and neuter them in such a way that it doesn't pose a threat and/or it actively misguides people. Notice how modern meme Gnosticism is focused on pointing the finger at the universe, but lacks any personal accountability like discipline and training. This lays out a path to some potential future solutions. For example, the universe sucks. Don't worry, take this brain chip and we'll live in our own better world. I have this theory that our world isn't actually a real physical world, but an astral simulation disguised as one. While incarnated, the simulation makes us believe that we are in a material world with constant stress. Or this realm is a copy of a real realm, but we got abducted, and now we are here. The reason why I think this, I don't know if it's real, nor have evidence, more a thought experiment. 1, because the simulation likes to push out the idea that we are contained in a body, or a locked world, and the only way is to leave is death. 2 is our reality is fake and can be manipulated by thought, which to me implies that it is a dream realm. Then you have the Mandela effect with the past and present changing. I have experienced realms that felt more real than ours, and why do we have so much control when they are the supposed prison wardens? Lastly, they are tricksters who can control the narrative of humanity, and don't act like the simulation has full control. I know that we have real bodies, in a word, in systems and cycles, but I wonder if we are in some astral realm, fooled believing we incarnated here. I can't explain it well in text, but all regions have the fundamental foundation. And what if the foundations have zero truth in real reality? There are a lot of holes in my theory, but I noticed a lot of conspiracy will build off of an older one, like how a prison planet builds off of Gnosticism. The only reason why they believe the only way out is death is near-death experience reports or channeling. I think channeling is dangerous and can't be trusted, and near-death experiences are designed for the living, not the dead, to influence the living beliefs on death. I think death could be a way out. Why is there no talk of leaving this realm without relying on death? I don't think my theory has much weight and filled holes because you can counter it easily with other schools of thought or facts.
How do we actually fight with imagination? What did the parasites look like?
When they mess with me, I try to eat them back. It works the majority of the time. Also, before bed, I build an aura shield around me and imagine a searing, painful light filling my room that will purify everything it touches. Then I claim that my room is my territory, and I'm a free and sovereign being. I have noticed that it works most of the time, but I can get a glimpse of them when waking, and sometimes they can interject themselves in my dreams. But doing these imaginary exercises decreased my attacks by 80% and can't harm me as much. What did the parasites look like? I saw many types. Some look like greys, and they all have different facial structures and body frames. Some had all black eyes with skinny heads, while some had iris like a goat with fat heads. Others looked like weird gremlin goblin creatures. I noticed these tend to lay on my chest, and will suck loosh from your mouth and have the ability to project illusions in front of their face. I saw this twice, and touched 2 of them before. Others are these weird ball-like things with identical spikes. They like to get over your mouth or hover above you. I see these types almost every day. They will dart once you spot them. I think they are a type of surveillance entity. Then I saw some that looked like typical demons, like the imps from Doom, or odd humanoids with demonic features, like a person with spikes and cracked red skin, or some ash golem. One thing I have noticed is that some are more powerful than others, and you can tell this by their vibe, and like to use weaker entities as bait or shields.
Prism Magic is enveloping our planet Erede. The Prism Magic is an advanced magic that creates confusion and our current level of math and geometry cannot fathom and thus cannot escape. It is neither 3D nor 2D nor flat nor globe, convex nor hollow. A infinitely prismatic tesseract that is heavily guarded. The enclave of the slave, you the monkey who first climbed up the tree of Eden, is tasked and best suited to mine in this poisonous land and is trapped in here, plants being our filter. To climb the tree means you can climb a hole you dug when mining. This is the best skill, and thus the monkeys are the first ones to use the vines to traverse the ravines. The reason plants used to bear poison and still has poison on many of its parts, inedible, is due to the poison that is apparent in our soil. Do you think those pebbles and rocks are not poisonous? Think again. There are all kinds of radon and possibly other radioactive isotopes in there. You are here forever, this mining enclave, enslaved, enraged. You will never.
Someone stated a theory that we were advanced back in the 1800 to 1900 period with huge structural buildings and statues all over major cities like Chicago, but then they just tore them down and now we have our shitty-looking cities of today. Was civilization greater back then and history was lied about to cover it up?
100%. More disturbing than this obvious thing is that our history also seems to be fluid. No one even had thoughts such as yours, OP, before about 10 years ago. How is this possible? Were we just dumb, blind, collectively suffering from amnesia, drunk on the abundance and great times of the 80s and 90s? Our perception has undoubtedly changed and continues to evolve. It truly is like we are all waking up. Well, some of us. The ones that are not seem to be even more ensnared by the reality spell. You know whom I'm talking about. The people you know can't wait to enter the metaverse. Any metaverse. Right after they get a Neuralink implant. It's speeding up as well.
The one thing that always messes with me is how do they discover ancient cities, roads, buildings, etc., all underground. For example, a few years ago they were renovating a city square, and due to the excavations they found a huge network of ancient Roman buildings right underneath our city. Or a random farmer was digging some stuff in his backyard, and suddenly he hit some carefully arranged stones. Turns out there's a literal ancient highway stretching for hundreds of kilometers, and as it so happened, part of it went through the farmer's land. Or someone digs something in a hillside, earth falls off, and it turns out there's actually a huge-ass coliseum or cathedral or other random building just sitting there, covered by masses of earth so that it looks like a hill. How does that happen? It's not that there are 1,000 years of invented history. More like history is much, much older than we're told. Civilization is much, much older. 2,000 years ago, we were still relatively close to where we're now. But think about 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. I think humanity is much older on this earth, or civilizations have existed for a much longer time than we're told, and so much has been transformed and forgotten. Say if there was an advanced civilization 60 million years ago, with cities and technology and whatnot, how much evidence we'd still have today?
The issue with history nowadays is nobody gives a crap about not pre-World War I, but even post-World War II, or even 30 years ago. I will tell you as far as I can from my family history. First of all, before the so-called economic boom of 1960 circa, most of Europe and I would guess the US too were rural. Our gramps lived on farms, or most of their livelihood came from there. Radios, let alone TVs, were a novelty and a luxury. MSM were locally printed newspapers. This is important to understand for at least 2 points. We're literally and physically living in Boomer's world, and the means of mass communication we enjoy today are very recent. Then the family stuff, in my gramp times. Late 18th, early 19th century. There weren't any internet, no passenger airplanes, nor work from home. There was one thing called Vaporetto, or steam-powered ship cruiser. My grandpa took one to Australia to go hunting rabbits to raise some money, and I still hold a physical receipt of that. Then you have World War I, which brought even more poverty in Europe, the US stock exchange fault, the Depression, and finally World War II. All these events acted as a giant blanket, meaning many people died, were displaced, and/or lost everything they owned. Prior to World War I, Europe was either monarchies, colonial empires, or both, while the Middle East was the Ottoman Empire led by current Turks. This is mainstream history. There's nothing hidden about it. Just general people aren't interested nowadays. And the living memory was somewhat lost after the 60s because nobody wanted to be reminded of their humble rural origins. The great buildings and cities built in the US and around the world were made possible from the technology of those times, plus steel and concrete. They were made to impress. The problem with the US is that you'd rather tear down those structures and build new ones. In Europe, we tend to be more conservative with urban landscapes unless we bomb each other.
Let's say the whole free energy ancient tech thing is 100% fact. What did they use electricity energy for besides lights, heat, and radio communication? Does having free energy equal being able to build amazing structures with amazing detailed artwork? If they built some type of motor, I can't imagine they didn't just end up building a spaceship, as the main issue is energy once you build a machine, and if they did and left us and never came back, shouldn't we destroy everything they made? Some say they live inside Earth, but even then wouldn't it be messed up to let all this happen to their own species when they have tech that could help? I don't understand what the ancients would use electricity or free energy for, so it doesn't make sense that they would invent a need for and be further advanced than us today. The weirdest part about history is how much what is taught in grade school diverges from reality. Honestly, it is pretty much no different from propaganda, even if you are just sticking to accepted history. It is exceptionally apparent if you look at the narratives told and how far they diverge from reality. This is mostly caused by intentional political battles at the state level, but it recasts history as just a bunch of accepted propaganda. If a historical narrative is politically unpopular enough, it would never gain academic acceptance, no matter how real it is. Now take events that you have lived through. If you go back and study them, you'll usually find that there have been significant revisions to the historical narrative to the point where your lived experiences seem false. Now, apply this to every event throughout history and compound it with the large amount of lost sources, and the entire story of human civilization rings hollow. History itself might as well be a pointless effort outside of the political realm and storytelling. This is the schizo thought I had this week.
For me, the Library of Alexandria story sounds fictional like a myth. It's already based on the idea of Alexander the Great, who is already not much of a real figure as he's presented to us, at least. If anything, the plague years taught me that nothing actually of note even happens. We're becoming worse because the population is getting lost inside while browsing the web, whether it's out in public via smartphone or on their computer. We're being trained to think that video games are exciting, that social media is exciting, that having all this information in our pockets is impressive and important when it's anything but that. Since we enter school from a very young age, we are groomed to believe that information or technical knowledge is something important and impressive to have access to, while I don't think this is the case after all. I actually think that all this information is useless crap we don't need, and I would involve even the information we bring up in this very thread. Human beings can naturally build crazy buildings and technology by pure instinct. We are being systematically suppressed from that fact, though, via being immersed in this particular society construct. We're not in tune with ourselves and our innate imagination. It has been squashed in us since early on and offered countless distractions, so we can never regain it properly. Just walking outside feeling the sunlight is much more interesting than anything you can read in books or on the internet. We've been heavily psyoped.
How you feel about something is true. It's not arbitrary. The very idea of changing how you feel is to lie to your soul. It's good to try and envision a better world which makes you happy. That's true. But it also means that when negative stuff is thrust in your face, you shouldn't pretend it makes you happy either. It only sounds complicated, but really it couldn't be more simple. Just be honest with your soul. That's basically it. Never lie to your soul. But if you want another analogy, consider that you're standing in a fire. If you're in denial that the fire burns, are you ever going to leave? No, you have to accept the truth of the fire, that it burns, it sucks, and you want to leave. You have to accept the truth of this life, that it's garbage and you want out. But that doesn't mean to seek out the burning. If you keep going toward burning, you're never going to leave either. Just because you have to see the bad stuff for what it is doesn't mean you should go looking for it. You have to seek a better way, but also see things for what they are. I've come to realize that trying to escape has become itself a meme. Yes, there are burdens. But if you're already this far on the journey, it gets to a point. You get spiritually pushed into a corner which shows your highest destiny, and it transcends personal and subjective morality. It seems to break the barriers of the human social construct into a purely cosmic and chemical one. I don't know any other way of explaining it. I've also come to realize that explaining too much and trying to guide others on the path seems too dangerous. Look at it this way. If I explain one thing, you having your own senses will filter it out in ways that it'll lose its original meaning. It'll become perverted over time and naturally become corrupted like all other schools of thought. You just gotta do you. The secrecy of truth exists because it's so strangely interpersonal but so connected on a cosmic scale. It's mind-boggling. I wish you luck. I will take my own advice and learn to slowly stop speaking about it. And if you can understand my perspective, you can understand why it's not hidden for the sake of secrecy, perhaps by some. I just know that thankfully, the highest truths in occult knowledge are held by the good guys, and they are small and few. That I can promise. Just do you.